My name is Stuart Ruddick, founder of Water Innovation Accelerator, and I am a steward of water and messenger of water. And I'm so deeply grateful to be here with Sylvia Earle. I could spend the next 20 minutes talking about Sylvia and her accomplishments in the world and the planet, in this blue planet, as she wisely calls it, with her organization she's founded called Mission Blue. Yet, I'm going to speak very briefly because I want Sylvia to have the time to be able to share her wisdom with us. It's a perfect segue where we have Sylvia, who is an elder. She is 85 years young. You'd never know it. She's as active and fit as the rest of us in our 30s. And she's got more energy and enthusiasm and passion because she has this zest for life, which is fulfilled by the water and the oceans. And Sylvia has been a legendary leader in the area of conservation with oceans. And she is a leader who has been really the first woman who has stepped forward and been acknowledged and recognized for her leadership. And so we are so blessed to have her here sharing with us her story, her journey, and her passion for this oceans planet that we live on. So Sylvia, I'll let you start by just telling a little bit about, when you were a young girl, you lived by the oceans, you had this in your DNA and in your blood, you became a botanist. Just tell us about how oceans play such a critical role in all of your life and your history as a young girl.
Well, Stuart, it's not just about me, it's about everyone, everywhere, all the time, throughout time. If you've never seen the ocean or touched the ocean touches you with every breath you take. Where does the oxygen come from that's in the atmosphere, generated largely by those little photosynthetic organisms out there in the ocean? So thank you, ocean. I've never seen you, but I really thank you. Or water that falls from the sky, water that you take from the faucet, put into a glass. There you go. Thank you, ocean, because that's where 97% of Earth's water is. Except now we know that deep within this rocky Earth, there are rocks that are laced with maybe as much water as there is in the ocean, but it's not accessible. It's bound to the rocks. It's not like a liquid sloshing around there in the heart of the Earth. It's tied up in rocks. But fortunately for life on Earth, ours included, we've got this liquid ocean that dominates the planet, that makes Earth blue instead of gray or brown. It is a living planet. Governs climate and weather. Home, literally, for most of life on Earth. Now, as terrestrial creatures, we are most sensitive and aware of our fellow terrestrial forms of life, trees, birds, mammals, insects, all that. But you could take all of that together, including not just the mass, but also the diversity. The greatest diversity and the greatest overall mass of life on Earth is out there in the ocean. After all, the average depth is 4 kilometers. The maximum is 11 kilometers. And now we know, didn't really know when I was a kid, nobody really knew until people got down there and could verify from the surface to the greatest depths and even below the bottom of the ocean. The cracks in the rocks in the bottom of the ocean. There's water that penetrates deep within, and life occurs wherever we have looked. We haven't looked everywhere that water exists as a liquid on Earth, but wherever we've looked, we found life, even in our own bodies. I mean, that's a big breakthrough since I was a kid, that we're like a living ocean. We have this biome of creatures who, the microbes within us.
Well, as you say that, I think about the fact that we've got some amazing leaders in our world that are going to outer space,
Right.
with Bezos and Elon focusing on outer space. And the ocean is, I call, inner space.
And it's our space. It's this part of the universe that we can touch. We don't have to go off to the moon or Mars to touch space. This is space too. When you think, okay, here's the solar system. And we're sending little probes to the moon, to Mars, to Jupiter. We ought to send more probes right here to this part of the solar system. We stand on it, we swim in it. It's our home. And, we've got better maps of the moon, Mars, and Jupiter than we do of our very own part of the universe.
Well, you've started this whole idea of us being optimistic because we could be looking at the oceans
Right.
and we could be crying because we could be so concerned about all the plastic and all the bleaching that's happening to the coral life and all the seafood that's been decimated. And yet you have what you call hope and your hope spots. Tell us more about that, Sylvia, please.
Well, the biggest reason for hope is knowing what we now know, that no one, not even the smartest people who lived or who've ever lived before the middle of the 20th century, could not know it. No one had been up to space to look back and see the world, and it's truly characterized by the ocean. We did not have the understanding of how the ocean governs climate and weather, absorbs heat, distributes heat and cold around the planet. We did not know when I was a child that, and we still don't know exactly how deep the ocean is. We know pretty close, 11 kilometers, plus or minus a bit, 7 miles. But, you know, going up in the sky, millions of people do this all the time in aircraft, 7 miles up. But when you think about going 7 miles, 11 kilometers down, the first descent, successful one, I mean, they came back. It wasn't just one way. 1960. And that was before the first footprints were on the moon. Okay, then fast forward to 2012, 52 years later, the second time a human being made it to the deepest part of the ocean. That's when James Cameron did so. And then just like 2019, Victor Vescovo, with a little submersible that he commissioned to have built. He's taken people down, including the son of Don Walsh, who was one of the first two to go. But he's done it 12 times. Now, but even so, that's how many people have been to the moon is 12. 12 times Victor has been to the deepest part of the ocean. Well, he thinks, but we know exactly how high Mount Everest is because it kind of comes to a point, pretty close to a point. The deepest part of the ocean, the bottom of the Mariana Trench, extends over many kilometers. Is there a little hollow down there somewhere that is deeper yet than where Victor and Don Walsh and Jacques Picard and where James Cameron have managed to go? I mean, it's kind of fun that we don't know exactly precisely how deep the ocean truly is. See, kids, there's a lot more to do out there.
So we have so many youth that are today on this call with us and care so deeply about the oceans. What inspires you so you can inspire the young for them to look at ways that they can act in their daily life and they can look at a career and their own purpose in protecting our oceans?
The ocean is most of the world. It doesn't matter what your particular talent is or your interest or passion might be. Is it music? Is it art? Is it law? Is it numbers? Telling stories? Taking pictures? Everything that humans do, whether it's writing poetry or I don't know, whatever it is, the ocean is there and needs you. It needs your care, needs your understanding. We need to see that our existence depends on not just the presence of the ocean, it needs a healthy ocean. We are in trouble right now, 21st century, because the ocean is in trouble, because nature is in trouble. Why? It's because, largely, what we've been putting into the ocean, and it isn't just trash, although that's a pretty obvious mistake that we have universally made over time. Put it in the ocean, it'll just go away. It doesn't go away, especially the new things we're putting in, the chemicals that don't degrade, the plastics that just break down into smaller pieces but don't degrade, don't go away, they become a permanent, at least a semi-permanent, probably there as a marker geologically and throughout time. This is the Plasticozoic, when humans created these substances that don't really degrade to the point of disappearance. So it's also what we're taking out of the ocean. And here's where I really hope everyone will listen up. We've treated the ocean, yeah, as if it's infinite in its capacity to recover, no matter how much we put into it or how much we take out of it. Here's the thing. When the killing stops and the caring begins, recovery is possible. We've seen it happen with whales. When I was a child, it was still an honorable pastime to go out and kill whales. We didn't really know whales. We thought of them largely as commodities, a source of money, oil and meat, fertilizer, even ground up their bones for fertilizer, for dog food, for cat food, for feeding to pigs and cows. Whales, that's what we did with them. It's like grinding up songbirds to feed to the chickens. We're still doing it, not with whales so much, although some countries still do take whales, but kill whales, I mean. But look at what we're doing to tuna. Look at what we're doing to swordfish and all of the other forms of life in the ocean that we collectively call seafood. We can't even get beyond thinking that it's sea life that we're consuming. At least when people go out and take a wild duck, you think of it as it's wildlife that we're taking home for dinner. Or in places where you go take an animal from the wild, it's bushmeat. At least you acknowledge it's wildlife. Fish, lobsters, oysters, clams, we just think of them as products. Really hard. Although I guarantee that 50 years from now, maybe not that long, that the kids of today are going to look back as adults and say, what were we thinking? I mean, right now, 90% of the sharks are already gone. In the Pacific, only, well, less than 3% of the bluefin tuna are gone.
That's devastating.
I mean, that are still there. 97% are gone. It means we've managed to consume them either directly or through incidental catch, and still we're eating them. If any creature on the land got down to such a low level, we would probably think we've got to stop killing them because, well, they're going to go extinct. But when it comes to fish, we just don't know when to stop. We just think of them as delicious. We haven't thought of them as components of what make the ocean healthy, a living system. Just as we know the land needs birds and other forms of wildlife for the cycle of nitrogen, phosphorus, the cycle of elements, the ocean too. And we have taken hundreds of millions of tons of, well, you can say fish, lobsters, shrimp, all that, but you could also say carbon-based units, blue carbon. If we're really serious about addressing climate change and everybody's saying, yeah, we've got to do something about the climate, then we're going to look at how much we take from the ocean and say, that's too much. For people who have few choices, if you're feeding your family or community, if you're really hungry, go catch a fish. That's one thing. But in the high seas, to have industrial trawlers taking millions of tons, that's just wrong. And
Well,
everyone should stand up and say no.
I
Our
agree.
generation is having their hearts broken right now because we're inheriting a crazy world. You know, the millennials, the youth underneath us, like we care so much, but we don't know what to do. Like what if you could, like, and you're seeing it in the youth, like people like Boyan Slat, who's gone and created this ocean plastics. And we just releasing this piece about the ghost nets. There's Dollar Donation Club is working on removing all the ghost nets, like setting a world record for removing all the ghost nets in 1 year. But if you, the question I have kind of from all the youth that are watching this and feel this in their heart are like, if there's one thing that we could do, that's the most important thing that we could do, if we really cared, what would it be, Sylvia? Help us, because it's like we're inheriting an overwhelming situation where we're seeing the decimation of all that life. We're watching our corals go away. We're watching we're a culture that's producing all these plastics and all these derivative industries that are spilling into the ocean. Yeah, right. We don't even know where to start.
Do you still eat tuna fish sandwiches? I mean, do you still munch on sushi? Do you still eat wild fish?
I do. I have sushi. Yeah, I do. Okay. I don't know if I can after this conversation, but
do you want shrimp on the Barbie? I mean, look, the first thing is use your power. You kids and you grown-ups too. Just think about what you truly know and what you don't know. Find out. Find out where that fish came from. Find out how old it is. A chicken takes about 8 or 9 months to grow from an egg to a chicken, and they can start laying eggs again. You got a pretty fast reproductive cycle. And go for a tuna, a bluefin tuna, takes about 10 years to go from an egg to an adult to begin making more tuna. And for some of the creatures that we now take from the ocean, like orange roughy, what's that? I would ask as my 10-year-old self. Nobody even had a word for the fish that now is common, or Chilean sea bass, taken from the cold, deep water of Antarctica, where nobody fished until pretty late in the 20th century and now on into the 21st. They were safe, had no predators, nothing in their history for survival prepares them for humans who are now entering their realm for the first time in the history of humankind. And we're using it armed with technology that makes it a really unfair kind of situation. They have no place to go, no place to hide. So, all right. So the choices you make about what to eat, what to wear, how you travel, how you use your power. Everybody thinks, oh, not everybody. You mentioned Boyan's slut, and you also think of other individuals who stand up, but everyone is an individual and everyone has power. So you might use your power by following those you admire and are doing what you think needs to be done. Join an organization that's really focused on something that you know is the right thing to do. You say, well, it's just one little thing.
Or they can be like you, Sylvia.
8 billion one little things called the humans. If you add it up, it's what makes the world go round.
Well, I think you're inspiring the youth to, one, be educated, but also to look at starting their own organizations and starting their own Mission Blue.
Please do that.
So you've been underwater with almost every single creature.
No. The thing is, the great thing is, we're just lifting the lid on the ocean, and there's so much left to explore. I mean, I see things every time I go, and when you think of what the kids are able to do going forward, just observe carefully, report honestly what you see. Anyone can do that, and everyone should do that. It's what kids start out doing anyway.
Can you share with us like one of your most amazing experiences underwater with a creature and how that touched you in your heart and just melted you?
Well, let's see. Here's a library of a gazillion experiences, but I'll choose one in Hawaii, where you are while we're speaking. This was when I had a chance to be in a little submarine, one-person submarine that has one atmosphere inside. So I didn't feel the pressure. I was just like getting on an airplane, instead of flying up, I was flying down. All right, Hawaii, in the middle of the day. beautiful blue, like your shirt, this blue, clear water. But after I closed the hatch and descended, the blue got deeper and darker, and then it turned like a purple, dark blue, and then it was black, except it wasn't totally black. You could see luminous creatures. It's maybe the commonest form of communication on Earth because when you go into the ocean, these creatures speak with light, flash, sparkle, glow, whether it's a squid or an octopus, many fish have their own little light organs. It's just amazing. It was like diving into a galaxy. So this is only about 1,000 feet down. I say only 1,000. Holding your breath, that's a long way to go. But and whales and dolphins and turtles do it all the time. 1,000 feet, no big deal. But for me, big deal. Inside of a submarine, no big deal because it's same pressure on the inside as we have here speaking in this, at sea level. But here's the thing. I kept going and spent hours looking around at the amazing nature of life in the deep sea in Hawaiian waters. And just as I had to go back to the surface, I shut everything down. I was ready to return, and something caught my eye. And I thought, oh no, it's just another piece of trash, because I did see trash, I'm sad to say, even there in Hawaii.
Wow.
And then I turned the submarine, and what was not a big piece of floating plastic, it was a big octopus. Almost as big as you, Stuart.
Wow.
Maybe bigger.
Wow. No way.
Eyes looking at me while I was looking, and I say her because within her arms she had a cluster of eggs. And mostly I've seen octopuses when they're kind of crawling along the bottom or peering out from rocks, but this one was off the bottom and swimming and looking at me. So I called back to the surface and I said, please, there's a big octopus here. I've got to stay and take some pictures. And so I had this video camera and I was going, taking pictures. 10 minutes before I realized I'd forgotten to put a tape. This was in the days of tape. I said, please, I need to stay a little bit longer. And so on the surface, it was starting to blow and become a stormy kind of, but they let me stay anyway. And I, for an hour, I danced with this octopus. It turns out that kind of octopus had never been seen in Hawaii before. It may be a new kind of octopus, or it may be one that's related to octopuses that live in the waters of Norway. I mean, that's the closest relative that I could find looking at the books. And, the water in Hawaii, when you get down as deep as I was then, at 1,300 feet, it's cold. It's as cold as the waters of Norway. That's the thing we forget when we look at the ocean. We look at the surface. As divers, you dive in the sunlit portion, but most of life on Earth lives in the dark.
Space.
And when you get down to 1,000 feet, it's really cold. And from there all the way to the bottom, except around a volcano, there's lots of volcanoes in the deep sea, lots of hydrothermal vents here and there, but generally speaking, it's really cold. And that's fortunate because that's part of the thermoregulation that this planet relies on to maintain the temperature that we think of as normal. It's the cold water that's in the deep sea. It's the warm water that is warmed by the sun, distributed by currents. It's the polar ice, that's also water, just happens to be frozen, that maintains the air conditioning system of our little blue sanctuary in space. So we need to respect the water and take care of it and realize it's alive.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that personal story. Adil, anything else that you want to talk with Sylvia before we head out?
Yeah, my soul is being blown right now. In that I've been having these repeated dreams. I having these repeated dreams where I'm in space, but it's a fluid medium, and I've never been down there, so I didn't. What you're describing is like I'm like having almost like a deja vu or a remembrance of perhaps my life is supposed to be about this somehow. And I wonder if a lot of other people out there are having a similar experience. But you're changing my life right now, Sylvia Earle. You're changing my life to consider, like, one of the most powerful forces that I think exists is wonder and awe.
Kids
Right?
have
And we've lost touch with that. We've lost touch with imagination and wonder and awe. Sometimes we encounter it in a film, right? But the truth is, mostly that happens when we encounter something novel that our brain or mind or soul has never seen or never seen on film, even, right? What we would experience probably if we went to space and looked back and had the overview effect by looking at this blue planet and that novel experience. But I'm realizing, and I want to explore these oceans like you have, and like Jacques Cousteau did, and fall in love. I watched this movie recently. We were doing a profile on it called My Octopus Teacher. It's my favorite film. We cried. Like, can you imagine? He developed a friendship with this being. And Sylvia, God bless you. You've developed a friendship with the entire ocean, with the beings of the ocean. And the Hawaiians here, the Kahuna lineages, Kalani, Sousa, and Frank from the lineage, they're wearing this big octopus around their neck. And I never thought to ask them, what was that about? Like, they're kind of, it's usually something mythological, and it'll be a big unraveling, but I'm going to ask them, because what you just told me about this massive octopus down there, that would be considered a spirit being for them, like a visitation, and I wonder if in their ancient times, as voyaging beings, that visited, all these other islands, and like, imagine the work that they had to do to navigate these waters without mechanical implementation and technology per se. Like, they literally would row to these and make relationships with all these island nations. They were the people of the sea, and they had deep relationship to the water and to all the beings of the water. I had such reverence and respect, and they've taught me so much about the hydrologic cycle, like kind of above the, as things kind of as water evaporates and goes and deposits precipitation and turns into glaciers, and it becomes rivers and goes down to the lowest point in the valley and then seeps into the earth and becomes aquifers. Like, I didn't know that the earth has a freshwater ocean on it. Of course it does, that we've been depleting. But you know what, you've unlocked this magical thing about porosity for me. There's no separation between the earth and the water. The oceans seep into that, and there's worlds under there. There are worlds yet unexplored on this planet.
Oh, for sure. Most of
Wow.
the ocean has not been seen by anyone, let alone really explored. Because think, holding your breath, how deep can you go? And even the deepest diving breath holders, the whales, the sea lions, the turtles, that's just still the upper 1,000 meters or so. A few go a little deeper than that, holding their breath. But that's still, most of the ocean is below that. It's where most of life actually occurs. Now, some say we need the ocean, but the ocean does not need us. In fact, the ocean does need all of us right now to listen up and to realize our actions matter times 8 billion. If we're just 1 or 10 or 100, we could probably get away with some of the bad things we've been doing throughout the history of humankind. But we have not shown respect that you speak of. Imagine the world of humans if we could treat one another with dignity and respect. That's where it starts. We don't treat fish with dignity or respect. We treat them as commodities. We don't treat one another with the right kind of respect either. So that's the transformation. It's the wonder of our existence. We should not waste our existence by
Beautiful, Sylvia.
by the kind of wrongdoing. There are words for it, but I'd rather just focus on the good things that we can do. And it starts with just, it's amazing to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a life for food, you should really be respectful and understand whether it's a leaf or a bird or a fish. Realize this is the way the world functions, but in nature you don't see the kind of waste, the kind of destructive force that our species has brought to the whole planet. But the good news, I always think of that, is that we know. Elephants are really smart. We know whales are smart. We know octopuses are smart. But they cannot know what the 10-year-olds of today all now have available to know. That we are a part of nature, that we are really dependent on all of the rest, because that's what makes Earth what Earth is. We didn't make the trees, we didn't generate the oxygen, we didn't create the water. We have a living planet because of the history of life on Earth. And what I love about diving is you don't have to go deep, although I love going deep. You know,
Yes.
as deep as anybody can hold their breath, like a couple of feet underwater, you might see a cross section of life on Earth. You know, in a volume of water like this glassful, you might find 10 different phyla of animals in ocean water. I don't think in this glassful of water, but in the ocean you might see the larval stages of so many creatures that are swimming around on their way to becoming grown-ups. Because the whole ocean is a nursery. It just is. It's
Source
where
of all life.
it is. And
Yeah,
all
the
of the
whole
major divisions
is
of
a
life
nursery.
are there. And
Thank you, Sylvia. Such a beautiful,
Oh my God.
so powerful. Right before we spoke, we had Veda Austin talking, and she shared with us some of the magical aspects of water, the fact that we are 70% water by volume, yet we are 99% water by molecule. And so we,
that's an
we
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are water beings. We call ourselves
Erosion.
Homo sapiens, but I think we are more aptly named Hydro sapiens. We are water beings, and sapiens means wise. We need to get to be, as your message is, to be wise water beings for all the water, and particularly coming back to self, the inside job, the inner space is we are water. So we need to care for ourselves and our species together as this humankind species, as well as every other species on this planet, which is what Unify is doing on World Water Day. Thank you, Adil.
Oh, thank you guys so much. You've just taught me so much in this conversation. And I say this with no, this is, I've just learned a new codex of how to unify with life, truthfully. And I'm so inspired to share it. I don't even know what to do with myself. My life calling is unify. And it is for a few of us, but it's to unify. We don't even know what that means. We pray one day it becomes a verb. But, you've just taught me a whole higher level of harmonic order with our brothers and sisters in a world yet unexplored. And God bless you, Sylvia. Thank you for the wisdom that you've passed on, the transfer of wisdom. As Sue was sharing, you've transferred wisdom on to us, which is incalculable. I honor you as a venerable elder and an amazing human, an amazing explorer. You've lit the fire of exploration in my heart. Just know that, and probably many others watching. Like, God bless you. You are awesome human. Jesus, may more humans become like you.
She's an aquanaut going into inner space.
You're an aquanaut. That's right. That's exactly it.
Everyone should
Wow.
dive in.
Wow. I love it. Thank you for this.
Any parting message from you?
Indeed. Think of what you can do to embrace what remains of the wild earth, land and sea. Do everything you can to embrace it with care. We have national parks. Now we have a growing network of protected areas in the sea. The goal that has been embraced by the United Nations is 30% of the land and sea to be fully protected. That is, let nature be nature. Just enjoy the gifts that we receive. By 2030, that's within the next 10 years. Kids, really, all of us, the kid inside of you, Stuart, the kid inside of every grown-up, find that child. Develop that sense of wonder, that sense of urgency. We have about 10 years to look at what we have. Going to the Mars or Moon or somewhere, it's a great idea. Go. Whoever wants to go. I want to stay and make peace with my own planet, with Earth. and do what I can, and I hope you'll do what you can to develop within the ocean and on the land these places that really restore health, a network of hope for all of us, not just for the trees, for the fish, for the whales, for the microbes, but for us and for all of those who follow. It's for all of us now. We have you could say it's a heavy burden because what happens in the future depends on what we do right now. But instead of thinking, oh, woe is us, think of this as, wow, what an opportunity. We can really make a difference. What are you waiting for? Let's go.
I love that optimism and that powerful message. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And before we go, I want to just, you've gifted me and our generation with hope, and I want to gift you with some hope too. And later on in the broadcast, we're going to be sharing how some of these individuals have created marine sanctuaries and figured out a way to scale marine sanctuaries. And I've been doing it and experimenting with indigenous nations, actually creating marine sanctuaries through law. And is a beautiful intersection of technology, culture, storytelling, and humanity as we're gamifying on an Earth interface, where it's not a virtual reality game or an alternate reality game. It's a reality game, like Buckminster Fuller understood, a world game. And the stakes are for real, and the planet is for real, and the players are for real. And they're gamifying. There's a whole group gamifying and scaling the growth of marine sanctuaries. So for those that are watching later, that your hearts have been moved, like mine has, we're gonna share how that can actually happen, how that we can become an age of Sylvia Earle's and Jacques Cousteau's. Sylvia, and you're bursting at the seams to say something awesome. Say it.
I think of the island nations. They have a bit of land, but they embrace a lot of ocean. Today and historically, their home did not stop at the shore. Those amazing island people and the nations in the Pacific, a few places in the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, mostly in the Pacific though, where the ocean was the highway. It was home. It was not, it was like all together. Today, we have carved up the ocean. We have exclusive economic zones, and even so, island nations have a disproportionate part of the ocean as their home, their territory, and jurisdiction, a bigger voice than most. So, I really look to the people of island countries to use their magnified ocean power to stand up and say, we have to stop industrial fishing on the high seas. It's not only killing the ocean, it's undermining the integrity of the whole planet for all of us. That is your home, the ocean, historically and even today. By whatever guidelines or laws you look at, the ocean dominates and you have a more powerful voice. I just urge all of us, whatever power we've got, to say, we have a chance. We still have 10% of the sharks. We still have 2% of the bluefin tuna. We still have about half the coral reefs. About half the mangroves are still in pretty good shape. And maybe half of the seagrass meadows, they're not all gone. We can look at the gone side and get really discouraged. Or you can look at the we still have it side, it's still here, and say, let's go for it. Let's take what we've got and go from this inexorably, this is what we're seeing, and go to this. We can do that in 10 years and then recover. That's what's possible. And the people who understand the ocean and realize the magnified role that the ocean has in governing the whole planet, that's power.
What a beautiful message, Sylvia. So let's all think about and send love to the ocean and all the species in the ocean.
The people of the ocean.
Yes, people of the ocean.
And the critters who live there too. Of course.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Stuart, as well. Thank you for stimulating this. And as always, love you, brother. Such an honor to be here with you and to celebrate World Water Day with both of them. Can't think of two people I'd like to celebrate World Water Day more with. Like, that's awesome. I love you guys so much. God bless you.
Water party.
Water
Cheers.
party. Sylvia, we have a closing ceremony at 3 p.m. PT. If you feel like coming, please come. We're also having Stuart's going to be hosting something on Clubhouse. I don't know if you've used Clubhouse. It's a new social media thing where people have conversations, and I think we're going to have Scott Harrison there, and yeah, right.
It's 15 tonight. We're going to host a Clubhouse. Let's get down and dirty for clean water. And we're going to have luminaries in the water industry on Aaron Brockovich. And if you can join us, Sylvia, we'd love to have you join us. I just followed you there. So anyone tune into Clubhouse 6:15 Pacific time tonight.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Love you guys. Awesome. Okay.